Oh, this is great. All right. Well, I think we're at 5 past the hour, so we only plan to be here for about 3 or 4 hours today. So why don't we get started? And Onno, I'll let you kick it off.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So hopefully you can all see that there on the screen, just our title. We're your hosts today. Dan Silverberg alongside me. Many of you know, some of you know me as well, Onno Coleman. I prefer the pronunciation Onno, Onno like Bono. If you are worried about how to say that, that should maybe help the memory on that. We are going to be recording this, so a little bit of logistics, a little bit of housekeeping. Want to share with you the agenda for today, and then I'm going to hand it to Dan, and we'll be off to the races. So, three quick things. We are recording this session. We had over 70 people sign up for this. About half of you are here, which is fantastic. And the other half will wave to you on the recording. And because we are recording, we're going to be sharing more vulnerably, I think, from our point of view as instructors. But when it's your turn to share something, if you want to, just we'll trust you to mind yourself that this is going to be recorded and someone's going to see that. So it's not totally confidential here today. In 2 weeks, when we do the actual workshop, the longer one, we're not going to record that. So you will be able to go full on and share as much as you like. But today, just alerting you to that, to be mindful of that. Secondly, we do want this to be interactive today. If this was just a lecture or a TED Talk or something, we would have just recorded it and sent it out to you. But it works much better in an interactive format. So we'll be calling on you from time to time. We'll be asking you to write in the chat. We'll be creating some breakout rooms that you'll be able to go to as well. So certainly in the breakout rooms, could you turn your cameras on, please? And that would actually help us here in the main room as well. Keep some of the engagement up, keep some of the energy up. We'll ask you every now and then for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So that helps us gauge that. And then on the interactivity, when we do call on you and open the mic, we just ask that you please be concise in what you're sharing. Just try to get to the nugget, and that way we'll be able to hear more and more voices. So those are our ground rules, basic agreements for today. Can I get that first thumbs up? Everybody good with those? Okay, thank you. Now, here's where we had designed this webinar and what we hope that you get out of it today. We're going to spend, as Dan said, we've carved out an hour and a half on the calendar today. We're going to aim to do as much as we can in that first hour, because assuming some of you have to drop, but it may go a little bit over, and then we'll stay for Q&A after that. And the three main things that we want to share with you today are, what is a paradigm? So we'll share with you a definition of that and a visual and a way to think about paradigms. Why isn't that paradigm the true you? And what is the difference? We keep talking about this alignment between the authentic you and the true you. So we'll get into that. How is a paradigm formed? And not just how is it formed, but how is it also reinforced? And how is a paradigm sealed? And then what can we do about it? That'll be the last part of the webinar, to share a structure and a template for breaking out of an existing paradigm that we might feel ourselves stuck in, that we want to break out of. So that's what we're going today. We're going to be your twin tour guides on this today. So let me say a few words about Dan, and then I'll hand the mic over. Dan's a seasoned professional with well over 40 years of experience. Can I say well over, Dan, or just over 40 years?
Whichever works for you.
Okay. Dan's been called the visionary leader, and he combines business expertise with a profound commitment to personal transformation and growth as well. So from the business side, his background in Global 500 Tier 1 business consulting, technology, EDS, managing director, Oracle. He's been a board of directors, serial entrepreneur, and he's been a CEO for over 25 years, leading businesses from $7 million to $400 million, and always exceeding those operational and financial expectations. He's big on exponential growth, not so much linear incremental growth. On the personal development side, he's pursued his own growth, his development, his personal transformation for these past 40 years, and has participated and facilitated and educated, wait for it, over 20,000 people on their various journeys. So today, 20,040, we can add that to the tally. Received his master's degree in leadership and coaching. He's well-versed in 20th century psychology, including some of which we'll hear today: attachment theory, transformational education principles, humanism, existentialism, neuroscience. Dan knows a lot. We're lucky to have him today. And embracing the concept of entelechy, which Dan can tell you more about later. Dan's aim is to unleash the genius within and bring forward each person's human potential, guiding them to lead, authentically embodying their inner genius. And Dan challenges, he does that by challenging partly institutional norms and empowering individuals to design the life that they deserve and the life that they yearn for. On the personal front, lives in Chicago and has 3 children. Dan, thanks for being here today. I'll officially hand you the mic.
Onno, thanks so much. Well, first of all, I really want to thank everybody for showing up today. It's an honor that you've come and give us your time. I know it's valuable. What inspired me to reach out to Onno and to create this webinar today was you're going to hear from a lot of my heroes today, one of whom is Carl Jung, who said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who we truly are. And so as we get into the presentation, I also want to bring you up to date on who Onno is. Onno's worked with hundreds of leaders at a wide variety of organizations over the past 15 years to enhance their leadership effectiveness, work more effectively in teams, and scale their impact. Over the years, Onno has consulted to world-renowned brands such as Google, Oracle, Salesforce, Dropbox, Adobe, Gap, Lamb Research, Whole Foods, Stanford Medicine, and many more, leading workshops like this or through one-to-one coaching. Trained initially as an engineer at Stanford, he says many years ago, not so many. He's still a bit of an engineer at heart, so he likes to find models that simplify how people work, making it understandable and accessible, and providing levers for making real, sustainable change. He's certified in various leadership and emotional intelligence and teamwork assessments, and brings a practical bent to his coaching and workshops. In his personal life, he enjoys competitive intelligence and has 2 kids. So with that, you now have kind of an introduction to sort of who we are. And we're really excited to bring to you the idea of what is a paradigm. But before we do that, we're going to go to a breakout. We're going to put you in groups of 2, and we want to find out from you what brought you to the workshop and what you'd like to get out of it. So I think we'll do about 2 minutes for each person, so about a 4-minute breakout. So what brought you here, and what would be a condition of satisfaction, or what would make this, something that really was worth your time and valuable? So Onno, you're going to do the breakouts?
I will launch them. I'll give an extra minute just for people to get to know each other. So we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks. We see many more cameras on. It's very helpful. Good for the breakout rooms.
I didn't get to finish my story with my friend.
I know, it's so cruel. We just wrench you back.
Right in the middle of the best part of the story.
Yeah. No flushing toilets, right?
Edie, you need about 15 minutes just to say hello. You're kind of like me. I like that about you. So let me ask you, does anybody here want to share about what they discussed in the breakout room? What brought you, and what do you hope to get out of it? So let's just popcorn. If you have something to say, please hop in. Ashkan,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I go. First of all, I'm very happy to be here celebrating Dan, the Oracle, and also my new friend Onno. Congratulations on this amazing transformational conference.
All right, well, let's get started. So what is a default operating system? And how many of you believe that you're fully conscious that every choice, decision, and how you react to every situation is absolutely, truly who you are? You are in control. No doubt that anything's put on automatic. Anybody think that's who they are? Okay, no way. Thank you very much, Ivan. So how does a default system get embedded in us? So here's my belief system. You don't have to believe it. You may have some other beliefs about it. I'm hoping today that some of the beliefs I have will be confronting. Some of the beliefs you'll just go, that's crap. Some of the beliefs you'll go, oh, that's interesting. I believe that too. That's what's interesting about beliefs to me, right? They're not universal truths. They're built off of our experiences. So here's what happens in my world. We come in as babies. We are in an inferior position, meaning that if we aren't in a warm place, if mom doesn't change our diaper, primary caregiver, if we're not fed, if we're not hugged and embraced, if we're not reflected, then we're in a lot of trouble in terms of our own survival. So we are sentient beings, which means we sense and we feel. So, and this is how the unconscious part gets embedded into who we are. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and maybe some of them will match and some of them won't. So you're a very little baby and you're living in a house where there's a lot of noise. There is a lot of disruption. You're trying to get mom to pay attention to you, but she's cooking, the phone's ringing, dad's on the phone, and the postman happens to be at the door all at the same time, and you're left to be on your own just the way it is. And these kinds of breaches happen all the time, right? So that's part of what happens. On the other hand, if I'm cooing, if I'm smiling, and mom is reflecting this back to me, I have much more a sense of security, of being held, of being loved. I make all of these decisions in an unconscious way. In addition to mom or primary caregiver, we also get embedded by extended family and our family. So in my case, for example, I have an older brother and two younger brothers. So I'm not alone in my kingdom anymore. And my older brother's beating the hell out of me most of the time. My mom's not saving me. And I've got all of this kind of thing going on. But let me give you an example around money, because money's kind of an interesting concept. So there's family A. Here's their concept of money. Money's bad. Money's dirty. Money isn't really something that we have a lot of. People with money are angry. People with money aren't nice. People with money take advantage of others, right? And people with money don't have our best interest at heart. Now, that sounds like a lot of individual belief systems, but this happens all the time. Family B. Money is good. Money creates freedom. Money delivers possibilities for us. Money allows us to give to charities to help others, to create a world where we can thrive, all of us. You're right. Money allows us to go on vacation and have fun. Those are just two systems that got embedded. So I don't know if any of you ever met some people, but in one of my clients, I had a person who made millions, lost millions, made millions, lost millions. And as we got underneath all of that, that's what we discovered. Money's bad, money's dirty, people take advantage of others. And so while he could make a lot of money, subconsciously in that default operating system, he wasn't supposed to have it. And once we cleared that belief and got to a more even keel, he hasn't lost any more money. How about early education? So we go to school and we get taught certain things. We get the beliefs of our teachers. We get the beliefs of the students who are around us. If you listen to Sir Ken Robinson, he would basically tell you that education bleeds the genius out of us. And in America, there's an argument to be made that school is not preparing entrepreneurs and critical thinking, it's preparing workers and people who will fit the system. Don't raise your hand, don't raise your head, don't be confrontational, don't be disruptive, just try to fit in. And then we have spiritual or religious beliefs, and depending on whether you had any religious upbringing or not, there are beliefs within those structures. Some would call them dogmas. These are also downloaded into us. And then there's cultural and institutional norms. So in a culture norm, having worked for a long time with men specifically, right, there's all this information out there, boys are in trouble today. So what's the belief system that is unspoken or maybe even spoken that downloads this operating system? Don't cry, don't complain, don't be emotional, put your big boy pants on, right? And what happens in that belief system is we now have a group of boys and men who are disassociated from themselves and others. They lack deep connection. They lack purpose. They lack having mentors. And so when we take all of these different influences from 0 to 10, we have 0 analytic filter. So everything that we witness and see is downloaded regardless of what we might think later on. And as most of you know, our brains aren't fully formed until we're in our early 20s. So all of this unconscious thing goes on. And then in addition, how we learn is we mimic, right? Where kids are really good at mimicking. So depending on how safe environment you're in, you'll mimic that. Depending how much nurturing you'll get, you could mimic that. And so all of these things now start to create this system. So one of the things in my work that I think is really interesting for you to do, and I will follow up with some notes on this so you don't have to take notes, but what's your story? Who am I? Where do I have bad faith? And by bad faith, what I mean is, where do I blame, defend, obfuscate, and create myself as a victim because I don't want to own the existential principle I'm actually responsible for my life? The existential principle is I'm 100% responsible for my life. So if you want to know the life you intended, just look at the life you have. And if you want, and so the beauty of that is, if you want something different, it's possible. And we'll get to that. And then finally, what is your relation to spirituality? And it may be nothing. It may be that there's a higher source. There may be it's an energy play. There may be, who knows, we're just here and we die. But all of those things will start to give you an insight into what is your default operating system. And then as little boys and girls, right, we end up in what's called attachment with our caregiver. So I'm going to share with you what I think mine is, and it's not pretty, and it's a lot of what's led me to the work that I've done. So if I look at my attachment, I would say it's insecure and fear-based. So what does that basically mean? For me, it means mom was emotionally not available. Dad wasn't really around. And so I think that from feeling secure and hugged and that kind of a thing, I don't remember being hugged a lot. What I know is in my earlier, if you want to know why I feel insecure, when I came home from the hospital, for the first 2 weeks, I never cried. The doctor in those days came to the house and he found that the nurse was sedating me with phenobarbital. So I was sedated the entire first 2 weeks of my existence. By the time I was 2 years old, my brother had broken my collarbone. Not a lot of safety in the house that way. And the fear base ended up in having me determine I needed to be a perfectionist and I wasn't allowed to be imperfect.
Our masterminds that we're having, we're doing them quite frequently right now leading
Can
up.
somebody mute? So, this is a part of my story, and it's how I interpreted what went on. And each of us has this story, right? So when you look at your life, again, I want to give you a couple of questions. So the first question would be is, tell me 3 of your earliest experiences. So I just told you 3 of mine, and that's going to have a cloud as to how things look in my world from a default. Tell me mom's favorite, dad's favorite. Tell me where you are in the birth order, if you have siblings. And tell me, what can you expect from the world and what can the world expect from you? So I gave you some early experiences. I'm number 2 out of 4, so I'm the peacekeeper in the family. I'm the one that had to make sure everything always was working smoothly. I was definitely mom's favorite. No doubt about that. And what I could expect from the world is it wasn't a safe place, and it was clouded with deceit and people not telling the truth. And so I grew up and actually entered the world as an adult. I had a PhD in being deceit, obfuscating, blaming, defending, being a victim, and all of those things that were embedded, until I had an opportunity to bring those to my own consciousness and then decide that I was going to do something different. And then last thing I'll share with you is the first two phases of what I think is around our human development. So Onno has a slide that he can bring up on the human development stage. So these are the first two areas of about 8 levels of human development. The first one is survival versus trust. This is 0 to 6 months. This has to do with tapping down your aliveness. The more you're in survival, the more you're in fight, flight, freeze, the more you're uncomfortable around your surrounding, the more you tap down your aliveness. And this is what creates the relationship with fear, excitement, safety, danger, and trust. So this is that early time that we talked about. And then there's that sort of vertical off to the left called choice. That's the existential principle. And that's where I have a choice when I realize, you know what, I'm not really in danger, but I'm not feeling good about this, and I'm in my survival. If I can connect to that, I actually have a chance to move to trust. The next phase is hunger to affirmation, and this is the terrible twos. I'm at my 2-year-old, I am now starting to investigate. I'm starting to look a little bit towards my identity. So I might be on mom's apron. I go a couple of feet. I come back. She's still there. I go further, come back, and I may end up actually in the next room. But if I'm not being seen, if I'm not being affirmed, if I'm not noticed, then I have this hunger. And I think we all know people who want to be the star of the show all the time and can't figure out like enough's enough. So this play of hunger to affirmation, this has to do with our relationship to hurt, love, and acceptance. So this is kind of like a fire hose of things about how we get an operating system. But does this, you can take the slide down, Onno. Is this making sense to anybody? Am I over the skis, or what's everybody thinking? Can I get some thumbs up here, or? Okay, thanks. So again, like, here's this operating system. It's not judgment. What's interesting about bringing these things to consciousness, it's data, right? And so one of the things that I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what do you hope for this thing, and how worried are you about it? And my answer was, this is an experiment. I'm actually here for learning. I'm here to learn, does it resonate? Do people think this is worthwhile? I didn't come with this old Dan historical, it's got to be perfect. I've got to please everybody. I can't have anything go wrong. And if anything does, I certainly don't want to talk about it. So what a difference in outcome and engagement and deepening relationship if I can be vulnerable enough to put that into the atmosphere. So I think that's kind of critical. I use the term historical. And the reason I use that term is historical is who Dan used to be, and I don't have to be that anymore. And if I can speak to my historical, I can speak consciously to my future. One of the things for all of us, I think, that are really important, and what keeps us from becoming the best version of ourselves, are our deepest yearnings. So when I say a yearning, these are the things that are in your heart. You know there's more, but we've stuffed a ton of things, right? We didn't yell at mom. We didn't yell at our spouse. We didn't tell off our boss who we really wanted to say things to. And so one of the things that I do in my journey with men is I take them to the graveyard. And it's always interesting because they never know why they're there, right? And the reason they're there is these are the inner child parts that we stuffed from 0 up to wherever to be acceptable, to fit in, to be liked, not to be abandoned. And so when we get back to our family system and we're 40 years old and we come back and mom has Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and everybody in the family is acting like they're teenagers. That's the family system. That's the homeostasis of don't rock the boat and be in the role in which you were sort of put into. So in my family, my older brother was the bad boy. He was always in trouble. So that role was taken. I ended up as the good boy. But it's not interesting when you can't play all the different roles. And that's where a family gets to be dysfunctional. It's also what holds down our operating system. So when we look at yearnings, if I were to really engage in my deepest yearnings, this is where my growth comes. So the yearning to be seen, the yearning to matter, the yearning to touch or be touched, the yearning to love or be loved. There's a yearning for existence. I don't know if any of you know, but teenagers today, never in my day, but teenagers today cut themselves. And what they say is that's the only way they know they exist, that they're alive, right? So this sense of mattering, of contributing. So as you look at your own operating system, what are your deepest yearnings? And are you actually going for them, or are you putting them aside for others? And then the last thing I'll do before I get to paradigms is to talk about feelings. And particularly for the male part of the group, we're told that, we shouldn't really have a lot of them. But in the science, actually, boys have more feelings than girls. We're just taught how to suppress them at a much bigger rate. So if your feelings and needs are satisfied, words that would come up are affectionate, inspired, engaged, confident, grateful, peaceful, excited, joyful. So I don't know how many of those are who you are during the day. But the other side of it is if I'm not satisfied, I'm afraid, I'm sad, I might be depressed, vulnerable, in pain, angry or annoyed. I might be averting people that I don't want to speak to. I might have this overwhelming feeling of fatigue and ultimately of being disconnected. So given all of this input, it's pretty amazing that we actually function at all. So now you've got some of the building blocks in a very quick way that will, in the workshop, we'll spend much more time and bring those things out. But you'll get to see how many different influences we're dealing with. So if we were to look at some of the personal paradigms and things that we might want to change in our own personal transformation, these are some of the things that Onno and I have seen in our work. I need more money to survive. I can't quit my job. I'm stuck there. I've got a family. I want to have more gravitas. I have difficulty confronting people. I have too many commitments. I don't know how to balance my work and life. I'm not reliable. I'm not trustworthy. I'm afraid to fail. I don't listen well. I'm too friendly. I'm a people pleaser. These are the kinds of things in working with executives and clients that we come up against, and it changes their lives. So Onno, do you want to speak to the slide?
Yeah, just bringing this up to see for those of you who are listening, how would you language the thing that you most want to transform? You heard that this workshop was about transforming in 10 to 20 hours and making some kind of shift. So I imagine there is something that you want to shift. So how would you language that thing? Is it one of the things that Dan just rattled off about difficulty confronting, or is it working too hard, or is it achieving too much? Is it feeling more on the pleasing side of the spectrum, being shy, submissive, rolling over? If you're willing and vulnerable, let's put something in the chat for whatever the shift is that you're interested in. Dan, we could also send people to a breakout, perhaps, as a way to get some conversation going on this too. What do you think?
Sure.
How are we doing on time?
I think we're doing fine on time. Is that something that would help everybody to go to a breakout? And can you come up with one transformation that you'd like to take away from today?
I'm not getting a strong signal here. Who wants a breakout? Thumbs up if you want a breakout. Seeing a few thumbs.
How about this? Why don't we just, if you have one, put it in the chat?
Yeah, let's do the chat.
All right. So what is we've done all of this now, building up the foundation, but actually...
Hey, Dan, I have a big question.
Yeah.
So with this is Jeff Hazlett here. So I love it. It's great stuff. How much of this is personal versus how much of it is business? Because in my breakout room, we talked more about not, someone was not living in their values, meaning they had values, but they didn't feel that the folks they were working with were living in their values. So they wanted to change that dynamic, change the paradigm, right? How much of this is personal versus like environmental or, the business itself that you're in?
That's a really good question, Jeffrey. So my sense of it is the reason that 70% of people say they are not engaged in their work is the disconnection between the values, beliefs, and principles of the person versus the team in the business. And it has a huge impact, I think, on driving innovation, on creating psychological safety, on having people speak their mind, on building collective intelligence to competitive advantage. So what happens is our individual experience, let me give you an example. I'm a manager, I'm alone and on my own. I don't trust others. If I don't do it myself, it won't get done right. I blame my team when things go wrong, and I take the credit when things go right. I've never talked to anybody who said, oh, I never had a boss like that. So it's what we personally bring into and that really in a way does form the culture. The other thing is, let's say that we have a CEO in a business, and the CEO has a very hard time with honest conversation and confronting issues. What happens out of that is it creates a toxic environment. That person becomes less trustworthy. The team that reports to that person becomes more frustrated. And so the two, in my mind, are inextricably bound. And it's how culture really gets created, right? The culture is, well, here's the things that we say about our culture, but anybody who's been in a business, it's the unsaid things, the unspoken, and you get tripped up because sometimes you have no idea those are even the rules. So that would be my quick response. Does that make sense? Thank you. Thanks for the question. That was awesome. All right, so let's take a look at actually what is a paradigm. So we have a definition for you. Anna, you're going to bring the slide up. So a paradigm is a mental model, and it shapes our understanding, the patterns in our mind that shape what we see and how we understand. Our paradigms shape the parameters for how we act in the world, what we should or shouldn't do, and what we can or cannot do. So we're all aware of what's going on in our country right now, right? Everybody keeps talking about how divided we are. Well, the mental model, the value system, the principles by which we were brought up have a lot to do with the way we see a particular event, right? So there are events in the world right now going on, and there's multiple sides and multiple points of view. So the perceptual intelligence of each of us is kind of this operating system. And so in a world of how should we act? Well, in my world, I'm interested to talk with people who don't have the same beliefs I do. I'm always interested because I want to find out how they got there. What's the impetus? What's the origin of how you came to? I love socialism. I love capitalism. I love red. I love white. I don't care whatever. To me, the more interesting conversation are the dichotomies, not the agreements. You go to the movie with a friend. You come out, you go for a cup of coffee. What was the most impactful thing in the movie? The partner says what it was. They ask you, you say what it was. You look at each other and go, were we in the same movie? Yes, we were. But what impacted us, what resonated with us, what matched our beliefs, that's a really telling thing about who we are and who we can become. So there are these mental maps. I don't know if you've ever felt like that your brain fills in certain things. I see certain words and I go, oh, that's this word. And then when I'm actually reading it carefully, it wasn't that word at all. Or, you know, we're watching a movie and all of a sudden you get distracted, but you filled in the whole story while you were gone. And so this is what happens. And one of the interesting questions, do your thoughts think you, or do you think your thoughts? If you're in default mode and you're just in, you know, the same old every day, then your thoughts are thinking you. And there's an argument to be made that our thoughts create chemical reactions in our bodies and our brains for dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin. And therefore, even bad habits and behaviors, we will continue to get those hits until we try something new iteratively and repetitively so that those chemical reactions change. Is this making sense? Yes, no?
You're getting some thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, good. So do we understand now what a paradigm is? It's a download of beliefs, values, principles, behaviors, choices that we've made, strategies, needs that we have. But how are they formed? Well, there's a relationship between nature and nurture. And what I would say is that nurture is 80% and far more powerful than nature. And we know from epigenetics that only about 5 to 15% of our health is really based off our genetics, and the rest is based off of our environment, what we eat, who we choose to be with, what kind of, are we having a good life, we're having a bad life, what our environment is. We learn how they're formed through words, like the beliefs that I talked about. We learn through innuendo. We see things and there's innuendo that happens there. We see things through facial expression and body language. I don't know if you know, but the way our minds work, if you go for an interview and you are sitting in the lobby and the person interviewing you comes out to the lobby, within 3 seconds, they've already made the decision to hire you or not. So there's a lot of, again, this unconsciousness, facial expressions. And our parents all have, how many of you have heard, as long as you're in my house, you'll live by my rules? Well, that's another, yeah, exactly. That's another way paradigms get enforced. And then culture, right? Our culture matters because we want to fit in. We don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to be bullied. We want to be accepted. We want to be liked. We don't, a big fear in humanity is to be abandoned. And so that is another way that they're formed. And a lot of what we're talking about is invisible. And this is the unconscious. And so in order to shift to transformation, if we can bring any of that unconscious to conscious in the present moment, that's when we can choose, and we can choose to change. That is really our personal power. The next thing is, how are they reinforced and sealed? Well, you've got a set of beliefs, assumptions, individual needs, and personal goals. So together, these shape the strategies that we develop. So let me give you a couple of quick, well, I don't know if they're quick examples, but they're meaningful. One of my clients, dad is pretty bad drunk, comes home on Friday nights. The house is really ugly. There's yelling, there's spousal abuse, there may be throwing of things. Mom says to this little boy, I'm going to feed you dinner. I want you to go upstairs to your room. I don't want you to come out till Saturday morning. This is a brilliant strategy for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy. It's a horrible strategy as an adult. So what that boy learns is the world isn't safe. Loud noises are scary, but if I'm invisible and I don't have a voice, I'm safe. Now you're in a business, you are excellent at the work that you do, but your boss tells you from a peer perspective, Dan, if you don't start to open up and bring forth these ideas, because you've got good ones, it's going to be hard to move you forward. You're invisible. You sit in the back of the room. That's one idea of having a paradigm reinforced and sealed. Here's another one. Young lady, African-American. Where'd you go to school? I went to school in Boston. Okay, for those of you that don't know, I went to school in Boston is code for I went to Harvard. Okay, why do you not say I went to Harvard? If I say I went to Harvard, people, because I was affirmative action and African-American, would expect far more of me than I think I'm capable of. So I'm going to hide that. And why don't you work harder? Well, my brother, when he was young, got extremely sick working hard, and I don't want to end up like him. Okay. And the third example, I remember being in my high chair, and my mom would give me peas, and I hated them. And she wouldn't let me leave until I ate them. Okay, it probably happened to all of us. And what did you take away from that? And she said, my opinions don't matter. What I want doesn't matter. And you would think, okay, well, now you're 21, it would be, right? No, these are patterns that get reinforced and sealed that have a very deep and profound impact on who we can be in the world. So when we look at how are we going to change these? And as I think as many of you know, I'm on my journey to train the next generation of leaders. It's a $60 billion market and 54 billion of it has no lasting effect. Why is that? Because when you have these paradigms, learning skills, traits, attributes, positive affirmations, and having an adjective in front of leadership, conscious leadership, human leadership, transformational leadership, put your adjective there. They're not experiential, they're theoretical. And so the inward journey is what we're talking about, not the external attribute and effect. So if we're going to go in and do that, we have to identify a paradigm, and then we put together processes and behaviors that get reinforced over a period of time. I'm afraid to ask for things. People don't want to help me. They don't want to see me be successful. And, you know, everybody's way over committed anyway, so why would I even bother? Well, that's a paradigm. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to ask, you're going to ask 30 times a day for things. Could you sharpen my pencil? Would you call me an Uber? I don't have time for lunch. Would you mind bringing me a sandwich? I'm running late on my project. Could you give me 15 minutes to help me, you know, clarify my thinking on this? We're not asking for big things. We're just asking for things, because the more we do that behavior and the more it gets positively reinforced, the more those neurons that kept us back over here, they end up going away, and the new ones, this is neuroplasticity. So we literally can change our lives, change who we are, can become who we're meant to become, but it's somewhat painful, it's courageous, it requires dedication and commitment. And so that's kind of the work that Onno and I want to do. And excuse me, I'll leave you with this Viktor Frankl quotation. Viktor Frankl was in Auschwitz during the Nazi occupation. He lost his entire family, his wife, his parents, his sister, everybody. And he came out alive. And he developed a philosophy called logotherapy, which is you can derive meaning from any level of suffering. If you know your why, you can endure anyhow. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. So I don't know about you, but there are certain triggers that I'm aware of and have been aware of that I've worked on a lot. And so am I in reactivity or am I in intention? Between stimulus and response, my boss just yelled at me, told me I was worth nothing. What am I going to do with that? Am I going to yell back at him and go, well, you're not worth anything either? No. Well, I could and have. Didn't work out very well, right? Because I was in such reactivity. It was like, no, you don't get to do that to me because I'm channeling my dad. And when I got to understand that, and I got complete with my dad, then I didn't have the problem with my boss. I had a whole new way of operating. And so this is really the opportunity. It's what excites me to be doing this work. And when I say to release the inner genius within each of us, it's there. It just needs to be uncovered. So thanks for letting me share all of this. And I'm going to turn this over to Onno. But I'll take, if there's any questions or comments or anything before we go to Onno, I am happy to do that as well.
Going once.
I take a question.
Yeah.
You know, we have all these, as you mentioned, all these habits and thoughts and intentions that has been imbued to us from childhood, or as experiences that we talked about. And then you have all these affirmations and the know-hows to change it. And then you have the intention to do it, but it's so strong. You see, you have done the work. You can see it, but the paradigm shift doesn't happen. Like example, so you want the new paradigm shift is right here. You have done the work and it's clear, but it's just you don't switch to that new you that you have to be, that mindset. So what you suggest what people can do to, because yeah, am I clear on that question?
Yeah, thanks, Ashkan. Yeah, so one of the things, for example, another client, I can't seem when I'm with my boss to speak honestly, tell him what I really think, et cetera, et cetera. You're not going to change by saying, well, now that you know that, you can just go and speak honestly. So what we would do is we would set up over a period of 3 or 4 weeks some initial conversations. You would start with me as a coach, and I would pretend to be your boss, and you would be you. And we'll put together something that you want to say that's safe, because I'm just the coach, I'm not the boss. And we'll see how that goes, and you'll get hopefully a sense of comfort. Then the next step would be after, and that may take 2, 3, 4 weeks just to get that part of it embedded. Then we might say, is there somebody on your team that you have a good relationship with who you could practice that with that would be more real world? Yeah, I think if I went to Joe, I could have that conversation. And we bring Joe in, and Joe and you would sit and have these conversations multiple times, creating either real experience of what you want to say, or we'll create some things that create dissonance and have that. And then we'll bring together to the boss. with the coach and the person and say, we're working with Joe on this particular idea, and would you be okay to sit in and be a part of the solution? And then the boss goes, yeah, sure. Maybe the boss will say, no, I'm not interested. Well, you got a problem then. But if so, now the boss is, not only is the boss helping out you, the boss is starting to get to see, you know what, maybe I threaten people. And all of a sudden there's his paradigm going into play. So it, like I said, it's really repetitive, and it has to be done over and over and over and over. And eventually the emotion of that experience will land, but it won't just do it because you recognized it. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what you're about to see in the coming slides, because we've got a couple of visuals that we want to show you, is how we take this sort of cloud. Dan, thank you for a masterful intro and setup, and also a couple of people saying in the chat, and I agree, for sharing your own story so personally and so sort of cleanly in a way. So it shows that you've done your work. But I think we have this kind of, and let me just adjust. I don't know if I still have you spotlighted or not. Maybe I'll spotlight myself. So it's a bit fuzzy, and I told you all earlier that I'm an engineer, and I like it when we can make something very practical and very accessible, and where the levers are, because otherwise you have this thing like leadership that's this sort of vague cloud of ideas, or teamwork, or emotional intelligence, or paradigms, or consciousness, or whatever it might be that's this topic. It can feel a little bit hard to, which string do I pull on, and how do I organize this thing, because I tried this and then that thing over there reacted. And so getting a sense of it, I think, is part of the path to understanding. And maybe that's the first thing I'll say, is there are maybe two approaches to change if we simplify things. One is a more maybe yang approach to change. The other one's a little more yin. So in the yang approach, we get the desire and we get the motivation, and it's like the Nike approach of, look, just do it, okay? Or the SNL skit, you probably saw it. Stop it. And he goes to the therapist and they just say, look, just stop it. Can you break through? Can you put that New Year's resolution? You tell people about it. You put it on stickies on a whiteboard. You remind yourself, blah, blah, blah. There's a way to sometimes break through and make change happen in a more forcible way. The way that we think works better, and what we use with our clients and that we see working, is the more yin approach, which is turning into the patterns and understanding, why do I do what I do? And how did all of this happen? And how do all the pieces fit together? And that understanding gives us a little perspective and distance from it, and then an ability to act on the system and transform it. So let me visualize this for you here. You've heard Dan talk about the various elements of the paradigm. Let's get them all onto one slide here. So there's the results that you're generating, the outcomes that you're generating in your paradigm, whether it's good money or not enough money, or it's a certain house, or it's fame, or it's fortune, or it's relationships that are either healthy and hale, or relationships that are broken. Whatever your paradigm is, it's generating certain results, and a system gets the results that it's designed for. There are also certain feelings that you experience being in your own paradigm. We're humans, we experience things through feeling. So maybe you're feeling joyous and buoyant and alive, or maybe on the other side, if you're here and you're wanting some kind of shift, you're probably feeling more of those uncomfortable feelings of tense or stuck, or jealous or angry or fearful. Whatever those feelings might be, those are also generated by your existing paradigm, and you get to be the tuning fork that experiences those. There are certain actions that you take in your paradigm, certain actions that are allowed by your paradigm. Do I speak up? Do I not speak up? Do I work, or do I, am I more of a lazy archetype? And those actions are the ones that generate the results. But who drives the actions? If we look a little deeper, the actions are part of a subset of strategies that you're adopting, some of those conscious, some of those unconscious. And the strategies are designed to get your needs met. Dan talked earlier about our fundamental needs that we have as humans: to be loved, to be appreciated, to be seen, to be heard, to be significant, to make an impact. We all have these needs. They're sort of organized and ranked slightly differently depending on who we are. But it's those needs that inform our strategies, because we want to get those needs met. And we also have subconscious goals, things that we've committed to, things that we've vowed to. I'm never going to be like my mother. I will always have enough money. I'm never going anywhere near that poverty line. I want to be liked by everyone. There are these goals that we make, these sort of commitments, often when we're young and the world is a little simpler and we're thinking is a little more black and white, that we just declare something. This is the way I want to be. But why would we declare that? The reason we declare that is because we have an understanding, or we think we do, of how the world works. And we have certain beliefs and assumptions about how the world works. And so that at the deepest level is driving the needs and goals, which drives the strategies, which then drives the actions, which drives the feelings, which drives the results. So to start to visualize this a little bit, we want to bring in the commonly used metaphor of the iceberg, because parts of this paradigm are visible. You look at my life, you can see the results. You can see my house a little bit. You can see how I dress. You can look on LinkedIn or whatever and see how popular I am. If you hang around me long enough, you can see the feelings that I tend to have. Those are, I can mask them to some degree, but generally you're going to notice those. Those are above the waterline. You can see the actions that I'm taking. Am I posting? Am I writing a book? Am I blogging? Am I, what? What's a little harder to see are the strategies that I might be using underneath that. And then it's also harder to see the needs and the goals. And then it's harder to see the beliefs and assumptions that I might be operating. And it's harder even for me to see that sometimes, because I just take that as true and that's just the way it is. And because of confirmation bias, I'm guessing many are familiar with that principle from psychology, you've collected data points from your life that fit your beliefs and assumptions. See, that's how the world works. Yep, that happened to that person. Yep. So it's hard to break out of that sometimes, but that is one of the key paths to making this change happen. So quick straw poll, maybe you can write in the chat, which of these is the best lever to pull on? If you could just change one of these things, what would you try to change? What would you try to lean into? Would you change those subconscious goals? Would you work on the actions? Would you try to get powered up from a feeling standpoint? I mean, actions are right there. They're accessible. They're what create the results. And the voting in the chat is leaning a little towards beliefs. Beliefs and assumptions have some needs, goals, also lower down the pyramid. We think it's the beliefs and assumptions. And some of my clients lately have said, God, I don't know, it took me a month or two to realize this, but this beliefs and assumptions bit, that's actually where the real lever is. Because if you can move that, that ripples up then through the rest of the paradigm and then gets you those results, that transformation that you want, that greater impact you want, that more authenticity that you want. That is the lever. That's you might have heard of these as foundational beliefs. So that's because they're at the foundation. And if you can find those and tinker with them, that's the sort of less yang, less willpower way to change things. It's more of an understanding thing. So I'll show you how this all fits together and then we can work through an example. But let me just quickly pause. Any burning questions at this point? Some more submissions in the chat. Yvonne, changed your identity? Yes. So right, so the beliefs have a couple dimensions. They have dimensions. What do I believe about the world? And how does the world operate? What do I believe about myself? And what do I believe about others? And it's worthwhile examining each of these three dimensions. Here are a couple of the ones that Dan and I have found from our clients. Is the world a safe place or is the world a scary place? Is it survival of the fittest or is it survival of the most flexible? What about myself? Am I good enough or am I not good enough? Brene Brown talks about this in her research, that people who are happier and have better lives basically have decided that they're lovable. And that's the foundational assumption. And the people who think they're not lovable, we do all this stuff to try to get love. And we do all this action and activity in a reactive way. And then there are beliefs about others. Important to understand. Oh, do I think something about men? Was I trained about women? Can I trust others or not? Are humans just a selfish lot? Maybe that's just the way it goes. That matters. That affects then how I show up in the world, how I move through the world, and what decisions and actions I'm allowed to take. So some of you, I'll make this semi-interactive here just for a few minutes, or I'm watching the clock. earlier today, we asked you, what are some of the shifts that you might want to make? Is it being that hyperachiever and then maybe being more focused and choosing your spots instead of trying to do everything? Is it being more successful as opposed to maybe coming further back in the race? Is it speaking up as opposed to being more pleasing? So you did the top part. What's the result that you want? What's the shift? Now we want to invite you, and it's throwing you on the deep end a little bit, to look at the very bottom of that paradigm. What might stream of consciousness, what might a belief or two or three be for you that limits your actions? A belief about the world, a belief about yourself, or a belief about others? Just keep the room quiet for 60 seconds here as you brainstorm on that. If anybody does want to share in the chat or come off mute, we'd welcome that. And let's add to that. Write down a few of the feelings that you're experiencing in your current paradigm too. For extra credit, you can write down the feelings you want to be experiencing in the new paradigm. But firstly, the instruction or the request is, what are your feelings you're feeling now in your current paradigm? Anyone willing to share? Yes, Ralph. Thank you. Fear of failure. Yep. I believe Yvonne says, I hope we're saying your name right too. Yvonne, Ivan. Everything is figure outable, Marie Forleo would say. Yeah, I can figure stuff out. That's a healthy, positive belief. Good. So in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be gathering back together again for a 2-day workshop. If you want to sign up for that, you'll have plenty more time to flesh this out. I just wanted to give you a taste of it now and the types of inquiry and the types of understanding you'll be able to get. One of the final visuals we want to leave you with here is how all these things fit together. So, because this is a linear list here of these different elements of the paradigm, and it's nice to know that beliefs and assumptions are the most powerful lever. But how does this all fit together? So, at the foundation are the beliefs and assumptions. That's first. This is our perception, as Dan talked about, the early experiences that we have of the world, cultural, family, maybe there's some trauma in there, big trauma, little trauma. Something happens and we decide something about the world. And then we decide something about how we're going to be in the world. So from now on, I am never going to get taken advantage of again. I am always going to be at the top of the class, whatever the thing is that you might have decided. That's going to then form your strategies. So I'm going to go through the world in a certain way, which requires becoming skillful at certain actions. And then that's going to generate the results and feelings that we have as well. You see, another input to the strategies are those needs. We develop strategies to get our needs met, and then that perpetuates the actions. What happens at the end here, and Dan talked about this a little bit, is that there's a self-reinforcing nature to this paradigm, and that we get a certain result, and then the system kind of worked. That was, we saw the world in a certain way, and therefore we responded and we acted in a certain way. Good, so it was right how we saw the world. So let's double down, let's act more like that, let's get that same result. And over time, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, however many years we've been running this pattern, it's self-sealing and it gets reinforced in this way. Now, there are other nuances about how this gets sealed. We'll get into those when we have more time. But I hope you can see just up front that there's a certain circular nature to this, and that you end up getting the results you thought you might get. And so like you figured out how to play the game. When this starts to break down is when the results and feelings aren't quite as positive anymore as we thought. We're getting results, but it's hurting. And the feeling, the cost is now outweighing the benefits. It's like taking some medicine that has some side effects. Well, the medicine worked, but it's too painful. You know, I don't want to keep doing that. There must be a better way, maybe a better way to interact with the world. And so that's the visual that we wanted to leave you with here. Let's do a quick experiential activity of this too. I'll take myself off the spotlight. Let's go into gallery view. So if everybody could just take your right hand and put it nice and snug on your face in a way that you can see through the slits of the eye. And you can see the screen. Who can still see the screen? Yeah, okay. And if you look around, you can still probably see the room that you're in as well. And actually, if you had to, you could probably drive a car like this as long as it wasn't stick shift, one-handed, you could drive. You're seeing enough of the world that you can function in it. But it's kind of obvious that you're missing parts of the world too. And there are details that you're missing and shades that you're missing. So now grab your hand and pull it away 3 inches, 3 or 4 inches with your other hand. Now, that probably took a little bit of effort. It depends how tightly this thing is gripped to my face, how easy it is to pull it apart. But now that I've pulled it away 3 or 4 inches, can you still see the screen? Can you still operate in the world? Yes. Can you see the paradigm, though? Probably just the outline of it. You can see hints of it. You can kind of see the shape of it. Pull it away a foot. Okay, now you can see the paradigm that you've been operating in, and you can see that there's actually much more out there that you've been missing. As soon as we get into our conscious habits, the paradigm is going to come back because we've been doing this for a long time. So we take it off gently, but being able to look at it and see all the different contours of it, and this is how it's shaped, and this is how it acts on me, and this is how it shows up in my life. That gives us the distance to be able to say, maybe there's a better paradigm. Maybe there's one with less of a blind spot that I could use to operate. Everybody has a paradigm. The Buddha has a paradigm, certain commandments that he followed. Jesus had paradigms, parables, principles. We all have paradigms. So it's a matter of, are you just going to take the one that was given to you and that your 8-year-old self figured out? Or do you want to choose one now more consciously and more thoughtfully, one that gets you more of the results that you actually want? That's the shift that we're talking about in this workshop. And that's the shift that we're offering to anyone who wants to do the effort of taking that thing out and then taking an honest look at it. Dan, I've talked a lot. What do you want to add in here at the end?
I think just that I'm very excited that everybody came. This is our first shot at it. And like I said, it was an experiment. To have this many people stay to the end is really gratifying, to say the least. And would love to share with you what we're doing with our workshop and see if that's something that makes sense. So I think, Onno, you've got the slide.
We'll do that. Yeah. And I'll put this on just for the recording, and also we can send these out later. This is one of my paradigms that I wanted to share. Dan shared so beautifully earlier. But I grew up in a household where both my parents were valedictorians, and reminded me of that quite a lot. They were Dutch, and I don't know how many Dutch people you know, but we have a cultural shadow of arrogance. So it was, if you're not Dutch, you're not much. I mean, who says that? But there's it's good to be better than others and to look down on others. So I need to be good. I need to achieve results. I need to be better than others. That was my beliefs that I took on. And then the goals were, okay, well, get some good grades then and be the best at sport, push yourself. I wanted to be appreciated. That was one of my kind of love languages or needs. So this kind of worked because when I was doing well and getting good grades, the teachers liked me. And when I was playing well in the sports teams, everybody liked me. So I studied hard. I practiced hard. I didn't have a social life. I didn't have a girlfriend. Happened to go to an all boys school, so that was easy. And it worked. Look, I got into Stanford. Isn't that the goal? Right? That's what everyone says. Get into a top university, and then life will be fine after that. But the associated feelings can never really relax, can never really take the foot off the gas, always have to be the best, be better than that person over there, led to some competition and jealousy. So every now and then that paradigm still whacks me, but I think for the most part, I don't feel I need to be better than others, and that life can actually be okay. There's a more generous, more abundant way of being. Okay. Anyway, so you will survive this workshop if you sign up for it. Dan.
Yes, I just want to share lastly that Onno and I working together on this and knowing each other fairly well was so interesting for us to see each other's paradigms. So Onno is an engineer. He's very structured. If you would see the agenda that this guy put together by the minute,
don't show them.
I could kill myself, right? I'm like serendipitous. I own what I know. I'm like, I'm going to flow, see where it goes, and I would end up saying to him, he would make these suggestions and I would go, could you stop managing me? And the managing and trusting and all of these different things came out for both of us. But because we're aware now of how it works, there's a sense of humor to it. there's a deepening of relationship. But in a business, you could really get angry with a worker who's constantly managing you, as opposed to, oh, that's really interesting. Are you managing me again? Maybe you shouldn't be doing that. And then we're both smiling because we get the joke. So I think these things, are good. I hate selling. I think what I do like is adding value and impact and bringing out genius in people. So we're very excited to offer this 2-day workshop, November 3rd and 4th. It's a Friday, Saturday. And in the workshop, we will take you and map your entire current paradigm and bring you across the transom to what we hope is going to be the authentic you. So again, you'll see how paradigms are formed and reinforced. It's a 9 to 3 p.m. Friday, Saturday. There will be one-on-one coaching post-workshop because we want this really to be successful and embedded. I hate doing this, but if you do it early, then you can save money. And if you bring a friend, you can save money and all of that kind of stuff. So the marketing part on the internet is something I just find kind of goofy, but I think it's a real value. I hope some of you will want to join us in that. And then we have one more slide that says what the outcomes of it are, and we'll send off these slides to you with notes and different things. But this introspective awakening of really taking this deep dive into your world to really understand where these beliefs and experiences came from, to develop conscious choices, align and lead with authenticity. We do want to break the cycle, the routine, and the default of how easy it is to fall back, and to fuel this passionate motivation. And I'll leave you with, I didn't bring as many heroes today as I will in the 2-day workshop, but Amelia Earhart is also one of my heroes. She said, the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. The fears are paper tigers. You can do anything you decide to do. You can act to change and control your life. And the procedure, the process, is its own reward. This is a journey Onno and I have been on. I know all of you have been on your own journey, and we would love to have you come and join us. And again, really thank you for supporting us and spending your valuable time with us. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We'll stay on for any questions that anyone might have about logistics or about the content.
Yeah, I do want to resonate a gentleman earlier. I don't know who it was. I took a picture. He mentioned that it's been a long time that he has been going to summits and he has not gotten good, solid information and value. I don't know who that was, but I want to double that. Even though I know Dan now, even though 90 days, he's like part of our family. I haven't seen him on this hat, and I want to say that he's very comfortable with his information. And I just want to say I was happy here, even though it was 3 days I wasn't here. I was sick. I made it to my computer, and my takeaway is that at the end of the day, if you want to make the paradigm shift, it's not just action. I thought it's just action. And that's why I put action. So it's also the beliefs and the thoughts that we have. So it's for me, so that's my takeaway is now action. Nice. With my beliefs. And again, I'm not a person of, I'm a simple person. I always go A, B, C, done. For me today, takeaway, I'm going to go out and recalculate my own results and see, oh, wow, I always have the action, right? And I always give 130%. So now I know, even though I thought I know the beliefs, but did I really know?
That's right.
So for me now, it's going to have a lot of homework. You guys open up some kind of worms, and I want to appreciate both of you. It was a very valued conference. Very happy that it's recorded so we can enjoy it later. And just my complete gratitude.
Thank
Don't
you,
worry,
Ashkan.
Grasshopper. We will get you over the transom.
A lot of appreciations coming in the chat. Thank you.
Hello, Dr.
Anyone?
Ravi Ashkan. Thank you, Marilyn Anderson, Sandy Hart. Great to meet you, Jillian. Appreciate it.